Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a framework that literally flips how teams work completely upside down. It's called Scrum. Look, if you've ever felt like your projects just drag on forever, bleed money, and then at the end deliver, well, barely anything, you are definitely not alone. We're going to dive into a method specifically designed to help you and your team accomplish twice the work in exactly half the time.
Okay, let's kick this explainer off with a pretty massive, high-profile failure. Back in the 2000s, the FBI tried to modernize their incredibly outdated, paper-based case management system. They knew their old way of doing things was totally hindering their intelligence work, right? So they launched this massive modernization project and, well, it turned into an absolute disaster.
After 3 solid years of grinding away, the FBI spent a staggering $170 million on their Sentinel project. And what did they get for it? Absolutely nothing of value. Seriously, not a partially working system, not a buggy system, literally nothing that agents could actually use in the field.
So what went so spectacularly wrong? Well, it all comes down to the traditional waterfall method. You know the one. Rigid Gantt charts, sequential handoffs, trying to plan every tiny detail years in advance. It assumes a perfect world. But the second reality hits and things inevitably change, that fragile linear plan completely falls apart. Today we're comparing that broken model directly against the agile, highly adaptable Scrum framework.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the FBI's expensive mistake, then explore the origins of Scrum, break down the actual framework, look at sprints and continuous flow, and finally, uncover the secret to team happiness.
Section 1. The FBI's expensive mistake and the failure of the waterfall method.
The fundamental flaw with Waterfall is that it assumes you can know everything up front. In a complex environment, that's just an exercise in unrealistic optimism. But look at this turnaround. After the FBI completely ditched Waterfall and switched to Scrum, they brought in a new approach, slashed their staff by 80%, and finished the project in just 12 months. Oh, and it only cost $20 million. The system actually went live. It totally proved that adapting as you go beats following a rigid, broken plan any day of the week.
Section 2. The origins of Scrum, from fighter pilots to software.
To really understand why Scrum is such a game changer, we kind of have to look at the guy who co-created it, Jeff Sutherland. His background is fascinating. He didn't just dream this up in some corporate boardroom. He pulled these ideas from literal life or death situations. As a fighter pilot in Vietnam, he learned that survival meant observing and adapting in fractions of a second. Later on, as a cancer researcher, he saw how biological systems brilliantly self-organize. By 1993, he synthesized this rapid military strategy with biological adaptability to create the very first Scrum team. Humans just need an iterative, adaptive way to work.
Section 3. The Scrum Framework and the Rule of 3.
The framework itself is beautifully simple. It operates on the rule of 3, starting with exactly 3 roles. This prevents conflicts of interest and totally empowers the team. First, the product owner. They own the what, prioritizing the stuff that brings the most value. Next, the Scrum Master. They own the process, keeping the engine running smoothly. And finally, the developers. They own the how. They're a self-managing unit that actually builds the thing. There are no heavy hierarchies here, just crystal clear accountability.
I want to pause on the Scrum Master for a second. This is not your traditional manager who just sits around bossing people. Not at all. Think of them as a servant leader or a dedicated coach. If there is a roadblock, the Scrum Master clears it. Their whole job, literally their main purpose, is to ruthlessly protect the team from distractions so the developers can just move faster and smoother.
Now, to keep everything totally transparent, the team relies on 3 artifacts. First, the product backlog. Think of this as your master wish list of everything the product might ever need. Then, the sprint backlog. That's the specific, actionable chunk of work you are committing to right now. And third, the increment, which is the actual working piece of the product you deliver at the end of a cycle.
Oh, and here is a massive trap teams fall into without Scrum. The perpetual state of almost finished. You know that feeling, right? When a project sits at 99% done for weeks? Scrum fixes this with a strict definition of done. In Scrum, done means it is fully verified, tested, and actually ready for a customer to use. If it doesn't meet that exact shared standard, it's not done. It simply goes straight back to the backlog.
Okay, let's talk about meetings. Scrum completely replaces endless, soul-crushing status meetings with 5 highly focused events. Everything happens inside a time-boxed container called the sprint. You start with sprint planning,
Then you do a daily scrum, which is a super fast 15-minute sync, and at the end, you do a sprint review to actually demo the working product. Finally, you wrap up with a sprint retrospective to honestly figure out how to improve the process for next time. It's the heartbeat of the whole system.
Section 4. Sprints and continuous flow. The heartbeat of productivity. This is where theory turns into tangible value. Sprints usually last 1 to 4 weeks. Remember Jeff Sutherland's fighter pilot background? Well, every single sprint is essentially an ODO loop. You observe where your product is, you orient yourself to new feedback or market shifts, you decide on the next goal, and you act quickly to build it. The faster your team cycles through this loop, the faster you outpace the competition.
And here is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of traditional managers. Multitasking is a complete myth. Scrum strictly limits the amount of work in progress because studies show that bouncing between tasks destroys your cognitive performance by up to 40%. Multitasking doesn't make you faster, it just makes you sloppy. By committing to a single sprint goal, your team finally gets the deep focus required for complex work.
Plus, when you prioritize the product backlog effectively, you leverage the Pareto principle. Your team gets to zero in entirely on the 20% of features that actually deliver 80% of the value. Why in the world would you waste time building out a massive, bloated plan when you can immediately build the most critical pieces, get them in the hands of the customer, and see a return on investment right away?
Section 5. The secret to team happiness and human-centric productivity.
This is probably the most surprising and, frankly, my favorite part of the whole framework. Fostering team happiness isn't just some fluffy, feel-good corporate exercise. It is a literal prerequisite for high performance. Research actually confirms that a happy outlook precedes and creates successful outcomes, not the other way around. If you want a fast, highly efficient team, you absolutely have to build a happy one first.
So, what are the ingredients for that happiness? First off, no micromanagement. You need cross-functional autonomy and a shared purpose. Keep the team small. Humans can only handle so many communication channels, so 3 to 9 people is the absolute sweet spot. Add in a sustainable pace, meaning no exhausting hero culture or crazy crunch times, and honest retrospectives, and greatness just naturally follows.
The sources we're exploring today make it crystal clear. Jeff Sutherland hit the nail on the head: change or die. The traditional waterfall illusions of command, control, and perfect predictability are entirely obsolete. The world just moves way too fast for rigid plans. Scrum works because it is built on the reality of how human beings actually work, how we fail, how we learn, and ultimately, how we succeed together.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own workflow. What is the single biggest impediment blocking your team today? Just think about it. And more importantly, ask yourself how applying a Scrum approach could eliminate that roadblock tomorrow. If you can make your work transparent, regularly inspect your progress, and adapt fearlessly, honestly, there is no limit to what you can achieve. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.